This is the Open Floor NBA podcast where we talk about the league and all the big stories going on in it. On this episode, we are going to get into the Milwaukee Bucks' recent struggles offensively. The Knicks, not a great road trip the Knicks have been on over the last week, 10 days. Most recently lost a game in San Antonio, which is hard to do given the state of the San Antonio Spurs. A few other topics as well. I know I hate to beat up on the Spurs like that, but I do want to start. And of course, Rachel Nichols is here, Monumental Sports Network, Fox Sports 1, All the Smoke, as she joins me every single week.
And Open Floor.
And Open Floor here on the show. But we got to start, Rachel, with the big news that broke on Thursday. The Boston Celtics have officially been sold. The Celtics going for the record price of $6.1 billion. That is not just an NBA record, but it is a record in all of the major North American sports. They're sold to Bill Chisholm, who's the managing partner at Symphony Technology Group, California-based, but Bill does have Massachusetts ties, which is something I know the Celtics were looking for. A lot to unpack here, Rachel, with this deal, but what do you make of the Celtics getting a record price for the franchise?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting on so many levels. First of all, the guy we all thought was the favorite, Stephen, who had been the minority partner. I never pronounce his last name right, so you can do it for me. Pagliuca, man. See? He had sort of been considered the front runner. He had been a partner of Wyc Grousbeck's for 23 years. So the fact that this guy comes in, now he does have more than just Boston ties. He grew up in Boston. He's a huge lifelong Celtics fan. He legit cares about this team. But he doesn't live there. So there is that. I know Boston fans are sensitive to that.
Very parochial.
Very. And then there are the more wide-ranging things. First of all, this ups the value that the NBA can have the buy-in price for expansion teams. We know they're looking at adding 2 expansion teams. They basically look at the value of other franchises. And obviously, when you get an expansion team, you don't have anything to start with. So it's not the same as, okay, they're going to get $6 billion. But it does raise the price because it raises the value of what owning an NBA team is. And that is very, very significant to the league overall in general.
It is. The price that the Celtics were able to get surprised me because you have to remember that the Celtics do not own the building that they play in. They play in TD Garden, which is owned by...
They play in the Boston Bruins building, baby.
They play in the Bruins building. And most of the teams that are sold, whether it's, the Phoenix Suns or the Dallas Mavericks or, whoever has been sold recently, they come with the arena as well, which is another potential revenue stream for an owner. The Celtics is being sold as is. They're being sold for $6.1 billion just for the Boston Celtics, not for the rights to the TD Garden. So that surprised me. Like, I always thought they would get north of $5 billion because they are the Celtics. They are a marquee franchise right there along with the Lakers and Knicks. They're legit. They're it. But to get $6.1 billion, that is a huge coup for the Grousbeck family. Remember, this team and this family bought this team for $360 million back in 2002. Like 23 years later, I don't even know what the multiple is on that return. Like
it's 6. I did the math. It's worth 6 times as much as they bought it for.
That's crazy to get that kind of return to get a 6-time multiple on this team. So bravo to them for getting this done. No doubt about that. I do wonder if in today's market that like an NBA team is even worth that anymore. Like you're buying the Celtics but you're also buying like all the financial headaches that they have coming up, right? The Celtics are an incredibly expensive team. They're deep into luxury tax. They're going to be luxury taxpayers if they keep this team together for the foreseeable future. Like, for example, like what they pay Sam Hauser, which is like $10 million per year. Like he's worth like $80 million. Like that's how much it's actually costing them with luxury tax penalties. So the bills, they're high. And that's part of the reason why I think the Grousbeck family, getting out of this time is a huge win for them because they don't have to pay any of these bills. They get all the benefits of being defending NBA champions. Wyc Grousbeck is apparently still going to keep his seat on the board of governors for the next 3 years. So he is going to have his cake and eat it too. So I give him credit for that. But like I don't know, like I know that the revenue that comes in is coming in from the TV deals is substantial, but I mean, can you make a profit in today's day and age if you're spending $6 billion on a franchise?
It's not about making a profit, though. It is about how much the team is worth when you buy in and how much it is worth when you want to cash out. It is not about what some of these businesses running at a loss is actually financially beneficial because of tax reasons and other things that are tied to other businesses. So it's just not about that. There is certainly serious concerns in terms of how money factors into how he runs the team. You're right. They are expected to have the largest payroll, not just in the NBA, but in NBA history starting next year. And so that chunk of change obviously limits what they can do with rules, with the aprons, all the aprons we like to talk about here in terms of trades they can make and things like that. Is an owner willing to take that on and not have that flexibility? I do think it's interesting to see a team sold like this when they are still one of the lead contenders for the title that year, because that's something I don't remember having seen before. I remember teams like the Bucks, winning when ownership changed a little bit, but that was a slightly different situation. I don't remember someone buying into a team. Do you, Chris, where it was sort of, oh no, they could not only won the title last year, they could win this year. And so I think when you say, is it worth it? Why are they doing it? If the idea is you can turn the key and possibly be handed a ring in 3 or 4 months, and the way you run the business doesn't really matter because it dovetails and fits in with your other businesses, who runs at a loss, who runs at a profit, and then you think that you may get 6 times the return in 20 years, that is worthwhile. The question is there going to be a point where this ownership group, the new guys, say, you know what, actually, we don't want to pay this much. Actually, let's trade, quote, Karl Anthony Towns the way the Timberwolves did, because we don't want to be caught in a financial situation. So we'll have to see. And I think that's partly worrying for Celtics fans. I also want to ask you, Chris, do you think this whole Wick being on the board of governors for the next 3 years is going to actually play out? Because didn't we hear this with Mark Cuban? I feel
yeah.
Mark Cuban said, yes, I'm still going to be making the decisions. Obviously, he had nothing to do with the Luka trade, and what seems to not, he's not saying it out loud, but you can tell from his expressions and body demeanor, he is horrified by the trade. And I just, he did not continue to make the decisions for that franchise.
I don't think that Wyc Grousbeck is going to be, the buck is not going to stop with Wyc Grousbeck with the Celtics once this new deal goes through. He wants to still be the face of the franchise. I think ownership is going to allow it, if for no other reason, that I'm pretty sure it's going to be in writing. Like the Mark Cuban situation was more of a handshake deal with the Adelson family, with Patrick Dumont. That ultimately fizzled very quickly. I think this situation with Grousbeck being the governor of the team through 2028, I think that's going to be codified in this deal. Not to say it can't go sideways 6 different ways. Like if you're a guy paying all the bills, you're going to want final say on everything, including some of the votes that these guys take as governors. But for now, that is how it's ultimately going to play out. Yeah, I mean, I guess if they can get 6 times return their investment in 20 years, does that mean, what does that look like? $36 billion for this team? Like I just don't see it. I can see
at some point that starts to become real money. Come on.
I can see incremental growth in the value of this franchise. I cannot see an explosion like we've seen in the last 20 years. I don't think 20 years from now, look, I think we're in that kind of that bubble for television rights. I think this might be the last big rights deal. I think whenever the next one comes up, what is it, 11 years from now officially?
Yes.
That it's not going to be, you're not going to get the kind of growth that they've seen in deal after deal in the NBA. I think that's obviously going to affect the valuation of these franchises. Now, why the Celtics are selling is pretty simple. Like, this is not a Wyc Grousbeck thing. This is an H. Irving Grousbeck thing. H. Irving Grousbeck is the father of Wyc Grousbeck. It is a family-owned business, but H. Irving is the top of that family tree. Like, he is the deep pockets in all this. And he decided that because he's in his early 90s and he doesn't want, I guess he wouldn't have the headaches if he was dead, but when he passes away, like, he doesn't want the family to have the headaches. I'm just saying, I'm trying to make sure I use proper language here. He doesn't want the family headache of him passing away and, the kind of the family squabbling potentially over ownership control of the Celtics and who gets what. You sell the team, all of a sudden you got money. You got $6 billion. Again, credit to the Grouspecks for doing this now because they got the championship. They're in position to win another one. Wick is apparently going to stay on the board of governors. You're only selling 51% of the team now, and the other part of it gets sold later. And you get $6.1 billion, which is what, 500 million or whatever, 500,000 more than the Commanders sold for in Washington. So I give him credit for that. Before we get to the ramifications of the future, we got to talk about the statement that was released by Steve Pagliuca, who is not happy that he did not win out in this bidding process.
Not at all. And I just want to add one more thing to what you're saying. Just another piece of data. This is the 9th team that has been sold in the NBA in the last 7 years. That is a huge record number. So clearly, this is a good time to cash out, whether you're near death or not. That's all I want to say.
Well, look, Mark Cuban, who is not near death, we don't think, he cashed out for cash out reasons. Mark Cuban saw the writing on the wall. Mark Cuban is a tech guy. Mark Cuban is a Silicon Valley guy living in Texas. He gets that here's this bubble, here's what we're in, and this is as far as it's going to expand to before it ultimately bursts. He understands that it's now a real estate game, that the Adelsons coming in, they don't just want the team, they want the team to be the crown jewel of a potentially gambling complex in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So Mark Cuban, he got it. He got that part of it. The Pagliuca side, though, was really interesting because I had thought for months that Steve Pagliuca was the leader in the clubhouse here. He already had a partial ownership stake of this team. He was known inside the walls of the Garden. He had talked about, keeping this team together. He's had input in big personnel decisions, not the least of which, as Wick Grousebeck has said, bringing Danny Ainge into the fold as general manager, which, led to everything else. He put out a long statement, and in corporate speak, it was basically a bleep you to everybody. I thought, at least I read it as that. And he kind of had a section in there. Yeah, he had a section in there where he put it out there that he said, look, I would have had the money to invest in this team year after year. And the phrase he used was luxury tax be damned. And those words, Rachel, stuck out to me during all this because that's the concern right now of Celtics fans. You've got a new owner coming in. It's private equity. Private equity, you always get a little nervous when you hear private equity, even if it's with a guy with Massachusetts ties. Celtics fans want to know that this team, if it keeps winning, is going to be held together. They don't want it sold off for parts. And what Steve Pagliuca did was say, hey, if I bought this team, I wouldn't be selling it off. I'd be investing. You'd be taking more of my money, and we would win so many championships. It's almost a Trumpian position to take there. It's we would be winning so many if I was in charge of this team. So what Pagliuca, I read, is doing is saying, if this doesn't work out, remember, you could have had me, and me, and I helped put this team together, and I helped everything that happened here in Boston. I was a part of it. You could have had me. Wick Grousebeck didn't want it. That's how I read it.
Why do you think Wick didn't sell to him? Because ultimately, I imagine it wasn't just, he got outbid, because he made it pretty clear in the statement. And look, we don't know. We weren't in the room. You can say anything you want in the statement. He seems to be saying that he put in just as competitive a bid. I'm just curious, the politics in Boston sports better than anyone I talked to. Why do you think this happened?
It's hard to say with any certainty. He's implied that he had the best financial offer. He offered so many details in the statement. It was a 5-paragraph statement where he's just basically saying no debt, tech investors, people that would help grow the Celtics internationally. I'm of the belief that the Celtics were always going to be sold to the highest bidder. I just believe that, because this is about money for the Grousebeck family. I don't know that Pags was the highest bidder in all this. He's suggesting that he is, and he's suggesting he would have been, and he would have gone over the top. But I don't know that to be true. So what I think right now is that he just got outbid for this team. I don't know if there's anything personal. I don't know that he and Wick were ever best of friends. That's for sure. But I do think it just ultimately came down to money with this team, and the fact that somebody else came in with a record-breaking offer that was the best offer the Celtics could have had.
Yeah. Well, we'll see, and we'll see what the future actually holds, because they're saying all the right things now. We're going to keep this team together. Huge Boston fan is going to do what it takes to win championships. But Chris, we've seen, whether the future of the Celtics with the core that they've built with Joe Mazzulla, I just coaches get replaced like matchsticks these days in the NBA, and to have a patient owner who's going to be okay with a coach having a down year is such a huge question mark now. And I want to know from the front office to the coaching staff whether they're going to be able to be patient on these issues.
I've said this before, and I've written this before. Like, I think the only thing protecting this roster is championships, right? Like, if they win a championship 2 in a row, they're not going to be broken up. Like, you're going to give them a chance with the current group, to win 3 in a row. If they come up short, if they get beat in the conference finals against Cleveland, that leaves them vulnerable to change. I'm not talking about Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum change. We're not going back down that rabbit hole. I'm more talking about, hey, you've got younger players on cheaper salaries that can take the place of what Sam Hauser can do. And we're going to trade Sam Hauser and get that contract off our books. Or, take it a step further. Could Derek White or Drew Holiday be moved? And Peyton Pritchard steps into that role. Peyton Pritchard on a much cheaper salary. Al Horford, I think, will be interesting next offseason. He's going to be a free agent. Like, how much are they willing to invest in Al Horford moving forward? Like, I think championships protect the roster. Anything short of that leaves it vulnerable to be picked apart. And look, at some point, it is. Like, the reality is you can't keep paying all these guys what you've been paying them. The question is, how deep do the cuts go? Like you mentioned, Minnesota, they made a deep cut. They made a decision on Karl-Anthony Towns that they weren't going to pay the money that was required to pay him. They were going to bring in a couple of other guys that would save them some money. It's cost them something. No doubt about that this year. I don't think the Celtics are going to go that far, but I do think you will see this team start to be picked apart a little bit over the next couple of years. By the way, Minnesota, like if I'm Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry and the Board of Governors meeting goes our way next week and we get control of the franchise away from Glenn Taylor.
Which is what we expect.
Which is what we expect. I put the team on the market right now. Like, you know what? Let's put the team on the market for $3 billion. We bought it for 1.5. Let's put it on the market for $3 billion. I bet they could get it. Seriously.
Yeah. I mean, it's a way to go, Chris.
I'm just saying, I would strongly consider that for financial reasons. All right, let's move on. Let's talk about the Milwaukee Bucks, who are not playing very good basketball at the moment. They lost to Oklahoma City. No shame in that. They lose to the Steph Curry-less Golden State Warriors. A little bit of shame in that. The offense, Rachel, in Milwaukee has really sputtered of late. Dame and Giannis are still putting up big numbers, but the guys around them just aren't contributing. The last 7 games, I think they're ranked somewhere in the bottom third of the NBA in offensive efficiency. Kyle Kuzma, three-point shooting has never been his strongest, weapon, but he's shooting around 30% from three-point range, and teams are kind of giving him that shot right now. About a month to go in the season, how concerned should we be about Milwaukee and where they're at?
I mean, what are we expecting of them? We're not expecting this Milwaukee team to reach the NBA Finals, given the other teams in the East. They're not better than Cleveland. They're not better than Boston. They don't have the talent that matches up with those teams. And they don't look like they're better than the Knicks. So realistically, they were going to be a 4, 5, and 6 team. What are they as we stand here today? 5th? Is that right?
They are 5th, but they're in basically a dead heat tie with Detroit for 6th.
Okay. So I just don't know when you see what this roster has done so far, and they thought they finally pushed the button on Chris Middleton. I'm not sure trading him for Kyle Kuzma gave them what they needed. I don't think that was their hole in the roster, and it's proving that way so far. I think putting guys around these 2 players has been a bit of a tinker and something that they haven't quite figured out since Dame came to the franchise. Also, these guys are aging. Giannis is 30. He's fine, but Dame is 34. And I think without the right pieces to sort of carry those guys in the moments that they can't do everything, I think they haven't found that formula yet. So when you say, where do they go in terms of expectations, or can they do what we expect them to do? I never expected them to beat Boston, Cleveland, or New York. So they're kind of doing what I expected.
But did you expect them to be ahead of Indiana? Did you expect them to be competitive
Yes.
at this point with New
Yes.
York? Because they're not there
No,
yet. Like they're
no,
not.
they're not there. I thought it was a good sign. It's funny. There was a lot made of the fact that Dame and Giannis met with Doc Rivers and they had a meeting and all this stuff. That was not because Dame and Giannis were upset and they demanded a meeting with Doc. Doc requested that meeting. And he requested that meeting because he is a player's coach. And he really wanted to know from them at floor level what they thought could work better, what they thought was missing. And I think that's a great sign for a team, because when you have that level of communication and trust between your lead players and your coach, when the coach is open to making changes based on what the lead players want, I think that is the sign of a healthy team. So I didn't have any problem with that meeting. In fact, I thought it was a good idea. And I just feel they need a roster tinker. I don't know. I did expect them to be better than some of the teams you named, or I don't know. I mean, Indiana's a really good team.
Yeah.
Like I expected them to be around the middle of the playoff bracket, right? Of the 1 through 8. And I think that's where they are. And I wonder if this summer, you'll have to tell me if you hear anything, because you're much closer to the ground on trade rumors and free agency and things like that. But I don't know if they can make any real changes that would give Dame and Giannis a better cast around them, which is what they had when they won the title, when Giannis and the Bucks won the title a few years ago, right? Bobby Portis made a big contribution. I mean, there was just all sorts of things where guys were playing in that right moment, at their prime, at their peak. And some of those guys are still on the team, but just not playing at that level anymore. And some of those guys aren't there anymore. And I just feel like that's going to be the issue, as much as Doc Rivers wants to talk to Dame and Giannis about playing style.
Yeah, and they're disjointed offensively. Like they're really good with those two guys. I mean, those two guys are not the problem. But when I watch Bucks games, I feel like the teams are adjusting to Brook Lopez being this 3-point shooter all the time. Like I think it's more than half his attempts have been from 3-point range. And they're playing smaller guys on. That's what Oklahoma City did in their game. They put Chet Holmgren on Kyle Kuzma. Like the teams are mixing and matching to give the Bucks problems, and the Bucks are not adapting that way. And I don't know what the fix is. Like to me, they look like a first round team. Like win a first round series, maybe. But then if they get into a matchup in the second round with Cleveland, I wouldn't favor them over Cleveland at this point.
Yeah, but winning a first round would be better than what happened last year.
It would. But that's kind of the ceiling. Like,
and by the way, I think the year before that too, right? I mean,
well, they had the injury. What was the Giannis injury year? That was the one where he went out against the Miami series. That was 2 years ago.
But I'm just saying they didn't. So if you're a Bucks fan, if they win a first round playoff series, that is going in the right direction. And I just don't think any of us, when we at the beginning of the year made our season predictions, we said, who's going to be in the NBA finals? I doubt that any of the major media outlets predicted that the Milwaukee Bucks would be the one in the East to reach the NBA finals. So if that's your standard, they aren't set up to do that right now. Not with the other teams in the conference, like Cleveland and Boston and even New York to some degree. To me, I don't see this as some huge disappointment, because I wasn't expecting them to win the conference or win the title. They will probably do better than they did last year, and that's a good thing. And then I really hope this summer someone can take a good look at the roster and make the changes they need around those guys to have that offense flow better the way you're talking about.
It's so tough to make those changes. Like they have cast their lot with this group. Like they have made their deals over the last couple of years that brought them a championship in 2021, did things that made Giannis happy. Getting Damian Lillard at that time made Giannis really happy. We can't forget that. I guess I had more expectations for this team coming in. I thought they would be the biggest threat to Boston in the Eastern Conference. I thought coming into the season, this was even before the Cat trade, but I thought coming in, the Knicks would probably have a great regular season. It really hasn't really panned out that way. Cleveland's turned out to have that great regular season. I just thought the Bucks in the playoffs, Dame's a proven guy. Giannis is a proven guy. Middleton at that time was on the team. You crossed your fingers and hope that he was healthy. Brook Lopez is a proven guy. I just thought they'd have enough. They have not had enough. Like the defensive issues, they've resolved somewhat. They're a better defensive team than they were most of the time last year. It's just that the offense can't get it going. And if you're as limited as they are offensively, where you're just kind of hoping that two guys make plays, you're going to have big problems in the playoffs. That's for sure. I mentioned the Knicks, and we're now kind of, with less than a month to go in this regular season, it's time to start talking about where the Knicks are as a team. Still good record, third best record in the Eastern Conference. Tough road trip. Jalen Brunson's been out for a few games of it, but they're still kind of in this gray area where you look at them as a contender to win a first round series, but I don't see them as a real threat to Boston in the second round. I don't see it. Like that's their second round matchup. They've been better since Mitchell Robinson came back, especially defensively. They're top 5 in the games that Mitchell Robinson has played in on the defensive end. But Mikal Bridges has been kind of okay. OG Anunoby has been okay. Like to me, they're the team that in the regular season has not lived up to expectations. What do you think of where the Knicks are? Are they a better team going into the playoffs now than they were a year ago?
I would answer that slightly differently. If they had kept the same roster, I would not have expected them to have the same results as last year. Because that lightning in a bottle, that Nova Knicks kind of almost college team energy, that doesn't tend to happen 2 years in a row. The grind of the season, expectations, things like that. We just don't really usually see it again. It's usually that 1 year. So I don't have any problem with the fact that they look to break up that core or make, changes to the roster. I don't know if Mikal Bridges is eventually going to sort of settle in the playoffs and be more of the guy that everyone wanted. He's close. I mean, he's doing a lot of the things they wanted him to do defensively, especially, but he's not close enough to give up those 5 picks for him. And so I don't know if he's going to be able, especially once Robinson, not just, plays for a month, but actually settles in and the rhythm of the team settles in. I don't know if that's going to affect Mikal also, but they lost that game.
I mean, you've got to play Towns and Robinson together for stretches. Like Towns was at his best in Minnesota with Rudy Gobert alongside him. That's what made Minnesota work. So if Mitchell Robinson is healthy enough to play significant minutes, and he looks a lot better, like on the floor, looks a lot better than I thought he was going to look coming back from that ankle injury. But you've got to play them minutes. And at that point, somebody's got to go. There's a math problem there, whether it's Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, OG Anunoby. It's not going to be Jalen Brunson. Somebody's going to have to give up some minutes in that mix.
Yeah. I mean, look, again, if they run into Boston in the second round, yes, they're probably going to lose. Boston, even now, and with all due respect to the Cavaliers, just because of the experience, they get incumbents' rights. Boston is favored to not just get to the finals, but win the NBA title. If you fall in the second round to, say, the team that wins the NBA title, that's a little bit bad luck of meeting them in the second round. I don't think the Knicks are quite at the level of the Cavs and Boston. I think they do need that one more thing this summer. But again, I mean, look, the other night was bad. The players sort of attributed it to the end of the long road trip. I think in the first 22 minutes, Karl-Anthony Towns was the only player to hit a field goal from New York. I mean, that's incredible, especially against a team where they've got, their big players missing. They were out rebounded, which is a hustle stat. And you expect the Knicks to be able to excel in the hustle stats, and especially with no Victor Wembanyama in the game, how are you out rebounded? So there's things that are exactly what you're saying that aren't quite up to the level of what they should be doing, even with the roster they have. But I just always look at the playoffs as being realistic. It's a little bit about what I just said about Milwaukee. In the end, if you are not considered the 1 or number 2 team in your conference this year, and they never have gotten up to that in the whole year, I don't know if I would consider, oh man, it's a disappointment if you don't make the conference finals. I mean, you could look at Dallas. We didn't expect Dallas to make the conference finals last year. We probably didn't expect Minnesota to make the conference finals. But maybe you're that team that flukily pushes in, but the expectation isn't that you make that. Because I don't think any NBA expert would say, yeah, I think they're better than Cleveland or Boston.
No, nobody would. What's interesting about the Knicks? Like you mentioned, like they need something else to compete on that level. Strategically, like they're top 10 in the NBA in 3-point shooting efficiency, but they're bottom 5 in the league in number of attempts. Like that's kind of wild.
Mhm.
Like in a league where, everyone is trying to be a volume 3-point shooting team, the Knicks just don't. Not on the level that some of these other teams do. Like maybe that's something that if it does go sideways during this postseason, they've got to address going to next summer, changing the system so that they can be a prolific 3-point shooting team. They've got guys that can shoot the three, obviously. Maybe
Right.
changing up the system a little bit to be more open, to be more modern. Maybe that could be useful for the Knicks because I think that's a problem. Like if you're able to shoot threes at a high level and make them, you got to at least be in the upper half of the league
Yeah,
in
shoot
3-point
more.
attempts. It's just so hard to do it otherwise.
Do you think that's just because Tibbs is one of the oldest school coaches we have left in the NBA right now? I mean, he
Probably
has
some
been
of
through
it's
so many years in the league and he's adapted in a lot of ways, but not in all the ways.
I think some of it's personnel too. Like Jalen Brunson, doesn't hunt threes in the way that some other guards do.
Yeah.
Anunoby's a physical guy. Bridges has had some problems with his shot throughout the course of the year. He's gotten his numbers right. Should be fair to him. They've been better as of late, but he's still in the mid 30s, down from last season. So, I mean, I think it's probably a little bit of everything. But that to me is a missing ingredient with the Knicks, like not being a prolific 3-point shooting team. But who knows? Like I think watching Mitchell Robinson with this group over the next few weeks is going to be big. Like, how much does he impact the way they defend, and does that inch them closer to some of these other teams, the top tier teams in the conference? But yeah, I mean, go ahead. Sorry, they've got expectations.
No. Yeah. And I would just say this in the West right now, I think we all feel like we absolutely know, barring something crazy unforeseen, one of the teams that will be in the Western Conference Finals, right? Oklahoma City, barring something really we don't expect or a big injury, we all think that they will end up in the Western Conference Finals. I have no idea who that other team will be. The other team in the West that is going to make the conference finals. I could name you 5 teams or 4 maybe that I think are contenders for it. And depending on who gets hot, depending on who gets injured, I think that spot is up for grabs among a number of teams. I don't think in the East it's the same thing. I just don't. I think that we have 2 teams who have very clearly been the cream of the crop the entire season. And I think it would take a fluke in one of their directions for another team to get in. So again, when you look at the Knicks, when you look at the Bucks, when you look at some of these other teams, I just don't think it's fair to hold this roster as constructed with these players, how they've been playing all year, to be like, man, why didn't they get to the conference finals? Because they kind of weren't supposed to with the way things have been going. And then you have the summer to try to get together a team that you're one of the teams in the top 2 that everyone's counting on all year.
Well, a team that is not going to make the Western Conference Finals, to segue, is the Phoenix Suns, who were celebrated this week after winning a couple of games in a row and moving up to 10th in the Western Conference into the play-in field in the West. Been a rough season in Phoenix, start to bottom, start to almost finish, I guess I should say. Kevin Durant, trade rumors dogged him for most of the year. I want to talk about the interview that Matt Ishbia, the owner of the Suns, gave to ESPN. And, he talked about kind of the core of this team and how he still believed in it. He still believed that there was a championship team in this core. And really, he's talking about Devin Booker. Like, Devin Booker is the guy that Matt Ishbia made clear in this interview what other people in Phoenix have been privately communicating for months now. That Devin Booker is not going to be traded. Devin Booker is part of the foundation of this team. He's the kind of guy that you build around. I had to read that story a couple of times, Rachel, because I just don't know how it makes a ton of sense. You're not a team that's close to winning a championship. You're not even a team that's really close to being in the top 6 in the Western Conference. You have an aging superstar in Kevin Durant, who's probably going to get traded this summer. I think everybody kind of recognizes that Kevin Durant's time in Phoenix is coming to an end. You're never going to convince me that whatever you get back for Kevin Durant is going to all of a sudden, prove to be the missing elixir. It's going to be the right mix of guys around Devin Booker. You're talking about going into next year, which is Devin Booker's age 29 season, with Devin Booker, with Bradley Beal, and with some new pieces after dealing away Kevin Durant. I don't see how that gets you into the play-in tournament, given what, again, we expect teams below Phoenix right now to keep moving up, keep doing, making moves to get into that playoff field. So what did you make of that interview? Matt Ishbia's kind of position on all this? Do you buy any of it? Do you buy some of it? Where do you stand on this?
Well, three things really stood out to me in that story, and I believe it was Tim Bontemps at ESPN, who really was a very thoroughly reported story. Few things. I agree with Matt Ishbia on one important thing about Devin Booker. He said to win a title, you need a championship level guy who can play with the best of them. You can't win a title without at least one of those guys, right? There's an argument you can't win without two, but certainly one. So why would I trade away when I have one of those guys on my roster? Why would I trade him away at age 29 when I was just trying to be eventually getting back to someone as good as Devin Booker? And I agree with that. I think sometimes teams are too quick to trade their biggest star when they're doing a rebuild. But the question is, can they trade Bradley Beal? Because the other thing that stood out to me, the number two thing of the 3 points in that story, was Bradley Beal saying, for the first time I have heard him say it out loud, I'm going to consider my options this summer. It all lays out. It's a lot easier to figure it out then, and we'll see where we are. Obviously, he holds all the cards. He gets to make the decision because of that no trade clause that has never been traded around from Washington's problem, obviously, over and over again, let's just say. If he leaves, yes, you keep Devin Booker, right? If he leaves, then you have enough on your roster without Kevin Durant's money, without Bradley Beal's money. Yes, you can start a rebuild around Devin Booker without a total bottom out rebound. And you can do that. You have to convince Bradley Beal to want to leave. And someone else has to be convinced that they want to take him. And that is the other side of the equation that we saw during
two
this
full
trade
years
deadlines.
Left in that contract. Yeah.
Right. So it's not just, oh, Bradley Beal may finally be willing to agree to a trade. It's someone's going to want him at that salary. But if that does happen, yeah, I agree with don't trade away Devin Booker. And one thing I've thought is, you know what, if Devin Booker asked for a trade at this point, it would be okay. He has given his blood and sweat to that franchise. They've gone around in a bunch of circles. I think he's had 4 coaches in 4 or 5 years. I wouldn't be mad at him for asking for a trade, but he has made it very clear he has no intention to do that. His hero, Kobe Bryant, played for one team his entire career, and Devin has explicitly, loudly, and often said he wants to do that. And he did it again in this story that Tim wrote. So I think that's not going to be the change. Ishbia doesn't want to trade him away. They have to see whether Beal is willing to go somewhere and someone is willing to take him. The third thing that stood out to me in that story was Ishbia saying, we're never going to do the bottom out thing. We're never going to do that. That's not the kind of guy I am. I'm always going to go for it. We're never going to be the kind of team that just sells everyone for parts and bottoms out and builds again. And that to me is the new owner syndrome that we always talk about, Chris. It's not just about, does he overspend a lot? It's not about, oh, do I trade all these guys? It is thinking that you can reinvent the wheel. The NBA is 76, 77 years old. There have been a lot of owners in NBA history. There is a reason there are maxims about how you do certain things because it has been proven out over time that this is what you need to do in certain situations. So I'm still seeing a couple of years in that new owner syndrome from Matt Ishbia. And if I was a Phoenix Suns fan, I'd be a little concerned about that. But I don't know if you can convince Beal to go and convince someone to take him. I think you do keep Devin Booker. And I see a path for them to, significantly move forward.
On the Booker Kobe stuff, maybe someone should remind Booker that Kobe did ask out of Los Angeles at one point.
Kobe asked for a trade on the radio. He didn't even do it privately. He did it on the radio. And Jerry Buss was like, not while I'm alive.
That Kobe wound up playing his whole career with the Los Angeles Lakers was as much luck and circumstance as it was a dogged determination to only play for that team. Like there was a point where I think he was going to play for the Clippers. He was definitely going to play for the Bulls at one point. Excuse me. Like he was, it's not like he was always committed to one franchise for his entire career. I get the desire to do it, but to me, the Kobe analogy, someone needs to, get us some articles from back then. I don't believe that the Suns can win a championship with Devin Booker. I believe that Devin Booker is too old to win a championship in Phoenix. Not too old to win a championship, but too old to win a championship in Phoenix. I don't believe that dealing away Kevin Durant and maybe Bradley Beal under even the best of circumstances is going to bring back the right mix of talent that Devin Booker can lead to the promised land. I think this team is way too far behind everybody else, every other top team in the Western Conference, maybe even way too far behind some of the teams behind them. Like, let's say Wembanyama comes back next year, San Antonio gets De'Aaron Fox to come back, they plug somebody else into their using their assets. They're going to zoom up and, as you've talked about many times, become the team to beat in the Western Conference. I just don't see it. And Devin Booker's value is going to decrease every year after this summer, because next summer he's going to be entering his age 30 season with one less year left on that deal. His value right now is at its peak, not just because he's the best player I think he possibly can be, but because this summer, I believe the options are going to be there. We've talked about Houston, how badly they want to get their hands on Devin Booker. They would move heaven and earth to get a Devin Booker, including giving back the Suns some of the draft capital that they own over the next few years. How about Oklahoma City? Like, let's say Oklahoma City fizzles out in the second round for some reason, hypothetically. It doesn't go their way. They don't win a championship. They've got all these draft picks. They've got all these young players, all this talent. What if they deal away a bunch of that stuff, give a giant package to Phoenix, and get Devin Booker back in return to plug Devin Booker opposite Jalen Williams and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander in that mix? That's something you got to consider. And this idea that bottoming out is not for us, we don't want to do it. Okay, but bottoming out, it works. Look at the teams at the top of the standings in both conferences right now. You had, between 2018 and 2021, the Cleveland Cavaliers did not win more than 22 games. Right now, well, they lost out on 70, but they're still in that 65 to 68 win pace. Oklahoma City, 3 years removed from a 24-win season. Houston was a dumpster fire 2 years ago. Remember what they were? Steven Silas had to deal with that crazy roster. Kevin Porter Jr., Christian Wood. 2 years later, they've got one of the most enviable young cores in the NBA. Yes, bottoming out sucks. It leads to some painful attendance years, some laughable years, but it works. If you have the right people in place to help you rebuild, it works. I don't get this sort of walking on a treadmill strategy of like, let's just keep Devin Booker and try to build some kind of winner around him. That's crazy. Like, it's just not going to work. If Devin Booker was 5 years younger, I would say yes, it absolutely could work because you could grow with him. But Devin Booker, as he gets older, things are going to happen. He's going to get a little bit less valuable. I think they have passed the window where Devin Booker can be the centerpiece of Phoenix 3.0 or whatever version of this Suns team that we're on right now.
Well, look, again, that is new owner syndrome. I can do it differently than anyone else. Those rules don't apply to me. I'm smarter. And exactly what you just described is, hey, it works for a reason. We've seen it year after year after year. There is a reason teams do this, and thinking it doesn't apply to you somehow, that you are smarter than the 76, 77 years of ownership, is just, I don't understand that sometimes from some very smart businessmen who just kind of lose that aspect when they buy an NBA team. I will say, look, in my mind, if you put another superstar next to Devin Booker, if a year or two you had if Luka Doncic falls in your lap, which is apparently something that could happen in the NBA, now we know that. I think if you put another big star next to him, and I think if you had the right pieces around both of them, that they could make some noise in the Western Conference. I really do. But here's the caveat. The caveat is because they have no first round draft picks until 2031, they can't probably do that. That path is going to be what, 10% possibility? I mean, I just the 1% if they do business with Patrick Dumont.
Yeah, if all of a sudden they get the one player that grew up in Arizona and desperately wants to return home and only will play for the Phoenix Suns, like that's the only path here, and that has to happen like in the next 2 years. Like, and I don't see it. I just don't see it happening. I think this. Look, I admire the desire to win from an owner like Matt Ishbia. I really do.
Absolutely. 100%.
Investing the way he has, not just in the Phoenix Suns, but the Phoenix Mercury, doing the things he's done behind the scenes to to build out the infrastructure there in Phoenix, spending way more than Robert Sarver ever considered doing during his time as owner. It's all great, but there's no objective general manager in the league that would say this team's in a good position. Remember last year when he said, Ishbia said that like every other team wants our roster? Like that was just crazy. It was like, no, they don't. No. They love Kevin Durant. They love pieces on this roster, but they don't love Yusuf Nurkic, and they're not clamoring to go get Grayson Allen. Like it's just not connected to reality whatsoever. I think the ship has sailed on the Phoenix Suns, and the best thing they can do is go into a full-scale rebuild. Try to do a deal with the Houston Rockets that gets you some of your draft capital back, so your tanking and your being sucky can be rewarded, like with draft picks.
As opposed to
now, where it's like you're just sitting there, and it's like, the next couple of years, Houston's going to be ruining for your demise. And if I'm Houston, I'm not sure I do a deal with you anyway. Like, why would you want to help them? They're trending in a direction. Like, why would you want to help pull them out of it or give them some of their draft capital back? I don't see it. I think that's there's kind of a bad moon rising down there in Phoenix, and I don't love the way that it's going.
And you're right, by the way. Ishbia has done so many other smart things. It's part of why I don't quite understand some of those quotes in the ESPN story, is that what he did with the local TV rights, I thought was brilliant.
Everyone's piggybacked on him. Yeah.
Putting the Suns on free over-the-air local TV, so every kid in that state grows up a Phoenix Suns fan. You cannot buy that kind of loyalty. And that is what keeps people coming back, even if you have a bad team, and buying your season tickets and making money for your sponsors and all of that. We obviously don't know for sure what happens behind closed doors, but it is important to me that it seems like he is running a much safer and better workplace with less harassment and prejudices than Robert Sarver did in the inner workings of that team. That's a big deal, man. Mm-hmm. So I think he has done so many smart things, and I do appreciate his willingness and want and drive to win. This isn't saying you won't bottom out, isn't about win or not want to win. It is about what is the best way to drive to win. The teams who bottom out, it's not like they don't want to eventually win. They're like, who cares? This NBA team, whatever, throw it in the garbage. They just think the best way to win is to do it this way. And it's going to take a long time, and then it'll be better.
Yeah, it will take a long time. They can punt on these decisions all they want. They can keep putting Band-Aids on a bullet hole, but they're not there, and they're not going to be there. I mean, I can't say I've been around the Suns a lot, but I've caught them a few times over the last few months. And the energy is just, I'm not going to say it's bad, but it's just not there. Like, it's just mild. And you're sitting on these Mike Budenholzer press conferences, and it looks like he wants to put Dwayne Rankin in a chokehold. Like, it's just like, it's all the same questions and all the same answers. Like, they keep running into the same problems, it seems like, week after week. And that's not resolvable with, a few tweaks in the off season. That's for sure. All right, Rachel, great stuff. As always appreciate you taking the time to join me here on the pod.
Excellent. See you soon. See you next week.